Hi everyone and welcome. Welcome to tonight's webinar. So hang on a minute, I just need to, there we go. So yeah, tonight we're looking at how to help young people manage disappointment. And I guess at the moment that might be a particularly relevant theme in terms of the amount of things that are going on for people at the moment, the amount of changes. So just to briefly introduce ourselves before I forget, my name's Maeve. Maebh and I'm a clinical psychologist and I work with the Jigsaw online team.
Good evening. Hi, my name's Dan Eastop. I'm a psychotherapist and I'm based in Jigsaw, Galway.
So what we're going to talk about tonight, sorry, I just need to toggle a few things so I can see what I'm doing. So the first thing, we just wanted to look at was just what a strange time this is. So there's been many unexpected changes, disappointments. Life isn't quite what we imagined it would have been a couple of months ago. So just acknowledging that. And then we'll spend a little bit of time wondering what this is like for you. So as a parent and also, of course, as a person, so what's it like for you actually to go through this time, these changes. Then we spend a bit of time wondering what it's like for your young person. And then we look at what might help. So myself and Dan have a number of suggestions, different things that might help. And then we'll hopefully have lots of time for questions. And I'd urge you to just write questions in whenever they come up. And the questions can be, looking for advice on something that's going on in your life and in your family. But also you might have questions about the presentation. You might be, oh, Maebh, Dan, could you go back to that section? And we've no problem explaining things again or going into a bit more detail if that's helpful. So yeah, I guess I'm saying there that no one asked for this, but here we are, slowly adjusting to many changes. And as preparing for tonight, I was kind of thinking back over the last couple of months, and I remember in January even, watching the news and seeing the scenes in China, and it just seemed so abstract, the abandoned streets, the quietness, the lockdown. And I don't think any of us imagined it was going to come here. And I guess it's a few months on now, we're slowly adjusting. And maybe each day we might move between, it feeling like a very big deal to just getting on with life. But it's very tricky. And I'm sure many of you have experienced things already been cancelled in terms of family gatherings, holidays, house moves, exams, changes in school and work, job loss, a fefew of the ones that I've written down there. But I'm sure a lot of you have your own personal experiences. And sometimes it mightn't even be specific things, more that feeling that, you had an expectation of how these months would be, maybe of how your summer would be, and it's not panning out in that way. And I guess one of the key things myself and Dan wanted to say today as well is that we're all in this together, so it's not like we're coming in saying we have all the answers, we know how this works, we can see the other end. It's something that we're all going through together. So I think that's just important to highlight.
Yes.
So what we're going to ask you to do, sorry Dan, my video's gone a bit funny there.
Okay.
So it's just going to take a few moments, if you wouldn't mind doing this. So wherever you are, I want you to take a few moments to reflect. So maybe just if you're in a quiet space, maybe you're sitting down, maybe you're doing something while listening to this, maybe just take a minute to pause and take a breath. And I want you yourself to reflect about how you are at the moment, and in particular about anything you've had to let go of these past few months. So maybe just taking a few moments, thinking back over the past couple of weeks and months, and thinking about your own disappointments, your own sadnesses, and maybe expectations you had. So just acknowledging what they might be. I'll just give you a few moments to do that. And have a think about what it's been like for you. How you've been feeling. How have you coped? Spending a few minutes just thinking about that. And also thinking about what helped. So just going a little bit inside, a bit of kind of weather reporting of the last few months and what it's been like for you. Oops, and then, take our time, but whenever we're ready, You come on in, Dan.
Yeah, so it has been such an unexpected time, such a strange period of time for all of us. And we felt like we wanted to begin this evening by focusing in on you and acknowledging how, we need to attend to our own disappointments first as parents, as caregivers. And we feel like this is really important because it's a way of being able to connect more with young people. We think that, it's a way of developing awareness of your own feelings, allowing the feelings to be there, being gentle with yourself, and kind of working out what we need, what helps us. And this will, we think, help you to connect and support your young people. There really is a powerlessness in feeling disappointment. It can feel like there is nothing that we can do, and that the parents might be the only ones left carrying it. But it might actually be that parents are feeling a lot of disappointment on behalf of their children, as we kind of see how much they're missing out on things. I think it's really important to acknowledge that children won't have the same perspective and experience as us. And we need to kind of recognize our own sense of disappointment and separate it out a bit. It might even be appropriate to share some of your disappointments with children as well, just to let them know that it's okay to feel sad and disappointed, and that grown-ups are feeling like that as well at the moment. They might respond to that.
Oh, whoops, sorry. Now.
And so now, if we kind of move on to observing your young people, the children in your life, let's have a look at things like what have they really missed out on. And I think with this, we're thinking about really listening to disappointment, acknowledging and validating, taking time to hear it, and to not rush too quickly on getting perspective and going into the future. Then to really find out what they're disappointed about. And I think with this, not to downplay the disappointment too much. It's really, really easy to kind of, given the magnitude of what we're all dealing with, to sort of to kind of downplay things, but young people won't always be able to hold that perspective. Find out how they're doing, how they're really doing inside, and look to validate emotions, really validate the upset they might feel, and give lots of positive affirmation on how they're actually coping with a very unique period of time, and maybe draw on how they've coped with a lot of disappointments before. I think as well, perhaps most importantly, is to try and be really honest with children as we can be. Don't try and cover up too much. And lastly on there, what's this like for you and the rest of the family? And we were thinking here about how it's really important to try and see disappointments as something that whole family is going through together. It's a shared experience, and try and share any disappointments that you're dealing with, and try and find constructive processes in that. Using kind of language like, it's really sad that we're not able to do that together, and it's sad that we won't be able to take you here, and we're really feeling sad that you won't be able to do this. And I think that helps take some of the emphasis away from the young person being the only one with the disappointment. So yeah.
And also, I think as you're sort of watching the slide, to just have a think right now about your young people, and what they're going through, even in this moment, just to really tune into that place as well. And then what we were imagining.
So yeah, what we're imagining might be going on in terms of internally with young people. I think this is really about acknowledging the emotional processes that are going on for a young person before we kind of go into looking at practical solutions or strategies. And I mean, you can see on the slide there, there's a whole mix of emotions and reactions and behaviors that could be going on for a young person when they're dealing with disappointment or loss. So sadness and grief, there feels like there's no hope. It could be moodiness, leave me alone, So the moodiness could be, leave me alone or to come and find me. Hopelessness, you can't help me at the moment. A real sense of anger or frustration that it feels really unfair. And then maybe as well anxiety around, what happens next? What are we going to do? How is the future going to look? I think for me, what's so important as well is, what might appear a relatively manageable disappointment to us might be representing something underneath for a child or young person that could actually be responding to previous losses or disappointments that have kind of built up. So again, it's about really listening and not kind of rushing too far ahead. Things aren't how they were for all of us, and I think this may be really confusing for a young person to make sense of. So a whole range of emotions are going to come through. Sometimes a child might need to hide, and this might be their way of protecting themselves, or they might need to be angry or to lash out. So yeah, some of the feelings that could come with disappointment or respond to disappointment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then in thinking about that, and I guess, what's going on for us at the moment, yeah, I was looking again at sort of, I suppose, ways in sort of psychology literature we might think about loss and grief, and people might know, think of sort of the stages of these things, and often we think of loss, I guess, in the context of losing a loved one. And without getting into it too much, I just thought this particular take on the different stages by John Bowlby, who's a British psychologist, it's just quite helpful. And certainly when I was revisiting it, so a lot of it resonated for me. I'm sure it might for some of you as parents, and also for your young people in terms of just understanding maybe a little bit of the mix of emotions that they're going through and maybe some of the reasons why. So the first one being shock and numbness. And I know for myself, when this all started, I'd wake up in the morning and have a moment of, sort of shocked awakenness into what was really happening, where I'd kind of think everything was as normal, and then you'd realize there's a real shock to it. And I think that's something that we need to acknowledge, that some people, might have transitioned through that at the moment. Things might have changed a little bit, but that's still there. We all got a bit of a shock a couple of months ago. And just to highlight, as I'm going through these, it's not that everyone moves through these in a linear way, but you might find yourself or your young people in different stages or categories, and it just can be helpful. So the second stage that Bowlby talks about is yearning and searching. So longing for things to go back to normal. There's a lot of uncomfortable feelings, maybe upset, feeling angry, feeling confused, the sense of, when are things just going to go back to the life that I know, which can be tricky. And then the next phase he talks about, is disorganization and despair. So maybe, many of us are beginning to accept the reality of the loss and maybe not looking to what might have been as much. But then also the other tricky feelings can come in, like feeling a bit apathetic or hopeless, or beginning to kind of question the meaning of things. So that's something to be aware of. And I think that's a stage that a lot of us are maybe finding ourselves in at the moment. So just to say that, to normalize that this is all okay. And final stage he talks about is reorganization and recovery. So beginning to accept a new normal in this phase, faith in life starts to be restored. People can establish new goals and patterns of day-to-day life. I think it's funny in a way, holding the webinar tonight, where some of the restrictions were just lifted. I mean, a small amount this morning, and there's a bit more outdoor socializing allowed, and certain workplaces can start up again. But my sense is that this phase, the reorganization and recovery, for many of us is a few months down the line, as things become a bit clearer. And I guess for a lot of us, these stages of loss, or I'm not saying everyone's experiencing this, but what's tricky is that we're in a very uncertain thing, that there's sort of, you might be feeling and your young people might also be feeling a sort of fuzz, a kind of a malaise, just not feeling great, but maybe not being sure why. So I guess this is just a way of putting a few ideas on it, a few words on it, that might just help you to understand your own experiences a little more, if it resonates. And also, as you observe maybe the confused or upset feeling of your young people, that you can begin to just have a context for it. So that's just one way of looking at it. So what we're going to move on to then, seems like we're flying through this and maybe overloading you with information a little bit. But I guess, you know, we spent this time wondering about what's going on, you know, what we're finding difficult. And now we're going to move into what might help. So this is the first one we're going to talk about, was about listening and containing.
Yeah, so these are our thoughts around what might help to manage and support young people with disappointments that are coming up. Number one is listen and contain. Allow space. And by this, we kind of mean recognizing the meaning in something that's been cancelled. So really appreciating the importance of the events for young people, and listen with real care to the meaning for them, how they have actually constructed the meaning of what's been cancelled, the disappointments. Try and see things through their eyes, basically. To check in, keep conversations going in the family or household around ideas for what young people want to do when they can get out a bit more. Trips that they've got planned, people they want to see, plans that they want to do. Really keep listening to their needs, planning things together, writing things down together. Acknowledge difficult feelings that come up. Parents can't make it okay for the kids. We can't make everything all right. There's bound to be a sense of helplessness that we have. And it's really hard, I think, to see children disappointed. It's tough. And we're going to feel this too. And we need to really pay attention to how we're all managing disappointment and changes. We're not going to get things back that have been missed. We have to accept that not everything's going to go back to normal, but we're all going through this together. And I think, you know, it can be helpful to try and really emphasize that this is a very special time we're in, and we won't ever forget this together as a family and as a family group. I think lastly on there, contain and help create feelings of safety. So important that, yeah, we're all going through this together, and that will help create safety and normality for a child. I think as well, in addition to that as well, it's about approaching disappointment in the way that we might approach a loss, to really allow a period of time to process and engage with the feelings that, you know, around what has been lost. I don't know what you think about that, Maeve.
Yeah, no, there's definitely something about taking time. And I guess I'm conscious tonight, you know, that when we're titling this helping young people to manage disappointment, you know, that there can be a sense of, well, and I'd be the same, you know, what do we do? And I guess one of the things that we're highlighting is that the first step is to not do a huge amount. You know, it's about maybe taking things slowly, acknowledging the feelings, finding them out, you know, which obviously can be tricky sometimes. Not everyone's a talker. You know, it might be about doing activities together and just seeing what words get said. Yeah, and I think there's something about the slowness and also your own process in that. And I guess that's why we, you know, asked at the beginning about your own experiences, because I think when you are trying to contain somebody's difficult experiences, especially when they resonate with your own, you know, you're also upset for your young person, it's quite important that you're quite aware of your own process and that you have your own way of managing that. You know, either maybe with a partner, with a friend, or you're through your own maybe journaling or different things that you do, so that you're really able to contain that for your young person. And we're not saying that, you know, this is hard. I'm not saying we can just do this, but it's just something to bear in mind. There is something about, yeah, providing that safe container, so that, you know, young people feel they can come to you, and that you can all feel safe in this. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then on that note, I guess, as Dan was saying about taking time, the next one I was going to talk about is helping a young person, helping them to learn to manage difficult feelings. And I guess, again, this is sort of with a slight, you know, health warning that the first step is to acknowledge and process and validate. And then it's thinking, well, actually, you know, this feeling's getting a bit tricky, and, you know, I need to do something to help my young person. So what can I do? So we have a few different ideas here. One is soothing. I think it's a really nice idea. So it's using the senses, particularly if somebody is very sad, are very upset. You know, sometimes if they don't want to talk, you know, it might just be a hug, might be wrapping them in a blanket, maybe, you know, making their favorite meal without kind of being told to, watching a movie together, just doing something gentle together. Being in nature is another one. Or the other side of this, you could encourage a young person to create a soothe box. Now, I know you probably don't remember all this, but that's something, this will be available afterwards. And also you can just look that up, and it's where somebody pulls together an item to complement it for every sense. So maybe a blanket, something they like to smell, like an aromatherapy oil. They could put in some music they like, a picture they like. The idea is you bring in something from every sense, and have them all together. So when somebody's upset, then they can just draw on them. So I think that can be helpful. The others that I'm sure you've heard before is around exercise, which is particularly helpful if somebody's very anxious or angry. And I know not everyone's into sport, but just getting out for a walk is always great. And if somebody was willing to do more vigorous exercise, that's also really helpful. But I would say channel what someone's interested in. You know, this isn't about kind of, you know, reinventing the wheel or introducing very new things at the moment. So working with somebody's interests. Breathing relaxation is another one that's very good for anxiety. That might be new to your young people. It might be something they're familiar with. In particular, diaphragmatic breathing is something you could consider. It's where you breathe into the belly. And again, if you just look up belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, there's loads of exercises. And if somebody practices that daily, it can really make a difference to their anxiety levels. And relaxation exercises as well. And the one in particular I want to talk about tonight is progressive muscle relaxation. So that's it's a whole body relaxation where you tense and relax all of the muscle groups throughout the body. And that's another exercise when practiced regularly that can be really helpful to regulate the system, calm the system. And then there's lots of other things, you know, to encourage a young person to engage in meaningful, enjoyable activities, you know, finding what brings them joy, you know, what they're interested in, and can we do more of that, you know. And sometimes they want to play video games, you want them outside, you know, that it's okay to play video games, it's okay to do what's enjoyable. It's okay just to get through this, you know. We don't all have to be achieving. And then the final one, and I put it there at the end deliberately, is about getting some perspective. And Dan, you were talking about that earlier as well, is sort of, you know, how do we get perspective on the situation, and we also want to validate. So it's a tricky one. I like the idea of sort of trying to see it from the moon, and I guess it's trying to find that balance between validating what somebody's going through, but also that we don't move into a space where, you know, someone's maybe wallowing in it in a way that's actually not helpful anymore. So this idea of actually, you know, imagining yourself up on the moon, looking back at what's going on at the moment, and beginning to see it in a little bit of context. And at that point too, you can bring in things, you know, a little bit about gratitude that you do have certain things, and that maybe certain things are going well. But it's just to be wary of it. That I think, again, you don't want to go straight to getting some perspective, because that can feel a little bit invalidating. But I do think it's an important one to keep in mind, and that it can be helpful. So there are just some ideas for learning to manage difficult feelings. And I think that, you know, to begin to use these skills or these ideas can really help in the longer term in terms of, you know, young people developing resilience, and becoming more able for challenges. And then the third thing we thought that might help is connecting in with the meaning of the loss. Yeah. I guess that's, yeah, looking into really, you were talking a lot about that earlier, Dan, weren't you? Like really connecting in with what it means to somebody, and what it is that's going on, you know, that if somebody's looking forward to a holiday or a birthday, you might assume that there's something that, you know, that there's something in particular that they're disappointed about missing, and it might actually be something else. Isn't that what you were saying earlier, Dan? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So a holiday is a good example. So a family holiday might be cancelled, and, you know, it seems like it's a shared disappointment, but it could mean something completely different for a young person. So it really is about finding the meaning with it, connecting it with the loss. Yeah, as you say.
Yeah, and trying to figure out what it is that somebody's disappointed about. You know, so it's kind of been looking about graduations. You know, is it what is it the bit? Is it the social bit, seeing their friends? Is it the milestone? You know, the ending, the saying goodbye? Is it the sense of achievement? Is it maybe the sense of family? You know, often come around and celebrate certain events. Or maybe it was travel or holidays, seeing
It's
a new
often the
place.
build up. It's often the build up, the
Mm.
excitement to an event, to an occasion that's the loss as well. You know, that's
Yeah,
difficult.
yeah, no, exactly. Someone's been looking forward to this. And so we have a few practical things that you could try. And again, it's not to go straight to these, but I do think, and I think it'll be different for everyone. But you know, there are some ideas about having, you know, a virtual party if someone's finishing college or school. Can you have a party over Zoom if you can't really meet? Could you encourage classmates to send cards or video messages to each other? And then as a family, might you be able to have a special meal to mark an occasion? And then the other thing I was thinking about was that at the moment, you know, the day that's in it, I know it's not that dramatic a day, but that we can go outside with a small group of friends, you know, is that something that you can do? And then I wondered, you know, could people begin to think about organizing celebrations around phases of reopening, that they could become sort of the new milestone as such, or you know, that could help you, that more people could gather, and that could be a way of coming together, and in particular around school stuff. I just thought it could be interesting for people to try and include teachers. I've certainly heard stories of teachers being saddened as well that they can't see their classes and that they can't finish, and I wonder what it would be like to send an email to a teacher, or would it be possible to include them. So there were just some ideas. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out there, Dan.
Well, no, as you're speaking there, I'm just thinking that, you know, it's a collective experience. It's something that families and communities, schools, you know, religious groups are all going through together. It might feel like for the young person that it's happening to them and that they're feeling it very acutely as an experience on their own, but there is so much out there, so many resources to do something together, to work through it together. And yeah, I think that's important to acknowledge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And then the final thing in terms of, I guess, what might help is we just wanted to highlight the importance of being gentle with yourself. You know, these are some ideas, some things that might help. And it's okay to, you know, well, what is even getting it wrong, you know, and it's okay to, you know, yesterday to have reacted in a different way, or, you know, or tomorrow be sort of harsh, or do things that maybe afterwards you're regretting, you know, that's all okay. We're all muddling through this. It's hard for all of us, and we're all feeling frustrated at times and upset at times. So just to say, you know, these are some ideas, but to be gentle with yourself in moving into them. Do consider trying different things with an open mind, and different things will work for different young people. And I would also say, you know, for yourselves to talk to others if you need some extra support, because I guess it's the classic when you're on the airplane, you know, putting on your own mask first. But this is a strange time, and most of us are finding it difficult. And if we want to support our young people, we do need to look after ourselves first. And then finally, and then just to get ready to ask questions. Yeah, there's plenty of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions about anything, do start to send them in, and we'll see them as they come up here. So where we wanted to end was just the idea of resilience and holding on to hope. So I have a quote there from Maya Angelou: "I can be changed by what happened to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." And I guess what we're saying is that, you know, life throws difficult things at us all of the time, and this is maybe an extreme version. A lot of us are learning things about ourselves maybe that we never knew before. But uncertainty, change, lack of control, these are all things that we all meet in life, and I guess they can be an opportunity for growth as well. And this can be a time, you know, if we can meet our disappointments and help our young people to meet the disappointments they're facing, it is a chance to learn what we're able for, you know. that actually we have the resources inside, and our young people have the resources inside, which and that we could emerge from this stronger. Yeah. Now, if you want to say anything else to that, Dan.
I absolutely agree. It's so important for young people, children, to experience disappointments at times. You know, that's normal. Obviously, we're in an abnormal time, but disappointments are normal to experience in life, and we find out an enormous amount of ourselves, and we can build huge resources and resilience from how we get through them ourselves and how we get through them in relation to other people. I'm thinking about my experience with my family here, the two boys here, and you know, it's something that we're going through as a group, as a family, and we're not going to forget that. It's going to be really significant for us in our kind of history together. So yeah.
And one of the things actually that I didn't mention earlier is coming to mind now is when we're talking about different things that, you know, can help your young people cope. I guess it's also important as parent, or as the, you know, guardian, or the person who's looking after your young person, that you're in a supporting role, I guess, you know, that actually your young person will have a lot of resilience and ability to cope within them. So it's not about maybe coming in and saying, this is now how you cope. You know, it's about cheerleading them and finding out what does work for them and what helps, and supporting them to cope themselves. Because Dan's saying, yeah, it's hard to watch your young people upset, but we can't take it away. So it's about supporting them to find their own resources. And of course,
we can learn a huge amount from the way that they adapt and the way that they create their own ways of managing it as well. So we can learn from young people too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's, I think, most of the information we're going to share with you tonight. Like I said, if there's anything that wasn't clear or anything you want more detail on, just send questions through. And yeah, now we'll take a bit of time for questions. I think I've one that's just coming.
Do you have one there?
Yeah, that I will read out. So yeah, it's just somebody asking about the disappointment of 6th class finishing. So finished up in March before graduation, no confirmation, no school show, no school tour, no sports day. Huge disappointment, along with the big change coming in September, moving into secondary school and going through puberty. So looking for a bit of advice around managing that transition when it's now in a very different way than expected.
Such huge losses at such a significant time in life. I really feel that kind of list of disappointments that are there. They're huge. Really important kind of rites of passage that are going to be denied. I really feel for the young person. I wonder how much the parents and the family are feeling that disappointment themselves. I really kind of hear that as being quite a complex set of different kinds of disappointments that need to kind of be approached with real care and attention to each one. I wonder about the whole family going through it, like we were just talking about it now. You know, family and friends and the community are all going to be going through a lot of those. So what kind of support is there community-wise in the wider field? That would be a question I had.
Yeah, and I guess what comes up for me, and it's something that I keep checking in my own life, is that it feels sometimes like we pressed pause in March, but actually we didn't, you know, in the sense that it's not like when we hit play again, these things can still happen. And I think that can feel like a shock sometimes, that idea that actually, you know, if you're ending primary school, you're in 6th class at the moment, you're not going to go back to your class, you know, and I think that's hard. I think, you know, coming back to some of the things we spoke about earlier, there is something about really allowing the space for that and not being in too much of a rush to pack that away again, you know, that is upsetting. But also, you know, being mindful that we also, in our observing young people, can have our own views on the importance of these things. So I guess to really check in and see how our young person's doing. But I do think that endings are very important, and it is important to mark endings, and it is a really tricky one when endings can't be marked. So it is something I think is particularly important to dream up new ways of doing that.
Absolutely,
and maybe
particularly during puberty and that time of change, where it's so chaotic and there's so much going on for young people, that those kind of endings are crucial to kind of mark the next stage and looking forward. Yeah, I would really encourage, me if it's appropriate for the person that sent that through, to maybe think about getting some support for the young person, you know, with Jigsaw. There could be a lot to speak through there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, just have another question there that's a bit more general. So it's a parent saying that my son is 16, is acting quite moody and quiet, missing his friends a bit, but he's in transition year, no major milestones kind of to be missed, but he's not himself. And what should I do? Yeah, I guess that makes me think of the sort of fuzzy feeling I was describing earlier, how everyone might feel just a little bit off at the moment, you know, and it's not necessarily one tangible event or one tangible thing that you're missing out on. So that's what kind of comes up for me when I hear that question.
Yeah, and absolutely, and the phrase, you know, he's not himself, or so and so is not really acting themselves. I think that's okay, given the circumstances, that we're all going to not be acting ourselves, or maybe how other people would normally see us. I think that we mentioned it earlier on in the material as well, around, you know, behavioural kind of reactions like kind of withdrawing or moodiness. There could be all kinds of things going on there. It could be a moodiness where it's like, look, I need some space, please just give me a bit of space, it's okay. Or it could be a moodiness where it's like, you know, could you come and help me and find me, and I need some help here. So it's really about trying to attune to that and find out where the person is and what they need at this moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I know that's easier said than done. Yeah.
Yeah, I have another question here, just wondering, you know, I guess about disappointments beyond COVID, which is a very good point and a very good question. I was hoping that the bigger disappointment of dealing with a long-term illness, dealing with anxiety, by not being able to keep up in school. Any good ideas on what to say? So I guess I'm wondering what's going on there. Is it that actually it's somebody in your life who's dealing with a long-term illness? Because a lot of that, I mean, that is very difficult, and it brings me back a little bit to what we were saying earlier, I guess, about that more general loss piece, you know, that there's phases to this, and there's a real adjustment and a real mourning, you know, to maybe the life that you had imagined, you know, someone might have imagined before you became ill, and the ways in which illness might limit life now. And moving into acceptance around that, that's really hard. And I guess what's different in terms of a lot of the stuff we're talking about today, that's corona specific, there's that sense that we're all in this together. And, you know, an illness diagnosis, you can feel quite alone with that, and quite isolated. So I think it's important to see, first of all, is there a way of helping that situation whereby, you know, somebody could connect in with other people who are also suffering from a similar illness. I mean, there's a readiness piece around that, but that's something to consider. And also, if it's your young person, you know, around talking to friends, do people know, and really, you know, sometimes there can be difficulties in speaking to other people about that, and young people can find it difficult to talk about illness. So I guess really helping your young person communicate around that, and meet those pieces. And then also it was anxiety.
Just quickly, sorry, mate, but just thought of something now, when, you know, what came to my mind as you're talking is that, you know, the current context we're in, it's all about COVID, it's all about this pandemic that we're in, and it must be extremely difficult for people that are dealing with illnesses or other kinds of medical issues or long-term, you know, illness, to feel like their particular issues have kind of been, you know, become subsidiary or gone into the background a bit. So I can really feel that there might be some real attention that's needed there.
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely. And then I have another question here, slightly different angle. My 14-year-old seems in good form, fairly positive, engaging okay with his schoolwork, but when I encourage him to contact his friends and do some socially distant meetup, he's finding excuses. It's like he's forgotten how to socialise outside the household. How can I encourage him and support him to start back?
That's a great question.
Mm.
And you know, I'm not going to claim to have an answer about an individual's experience of what we're going through. It's going to be unique. I imagine there must be many people who have, for whatever reason, kind of felt like they've wanted to cut themselves off a bit more, or maybe lost some confidence in how they're socializing with others, or, you know, I think there could be so much going on. And in a way, you know, I don't want to kind of draw inevitably back on what we've been saying, but there is something I'm really trying to unpack what's gone on there, what's going on. It could be a concern, or it could be something that's actually okay and that he's actually all right in himself. So yeah, I'd really want to explore a bit more about what's going on there. What do you think, Maeve? Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I have heard a few people talk about, you know, I guess young people I've met, and I've met young people who are, I guess, spoken to over the last little while, people who are relieved that they're out of school and relieved they're out of that social contact. And I guess there can be different reasons for that. You know, some of it is actually personality styles, and some of it could be something else. So I guess it'd be important to tune into that and see what's actually going on with him. And I wonder, is it, you know, in the time that we're in, there can be a sense of cocooning and, you know, wrapping up in our families, and not everyone's ready to let go of that. And I've heard, you know, there's a lot of anxiety out there actually about the change back. So so in that sense, I wouldn't be in a big rush. But you know him, you know him, and obviously we don't. So I guess it's about finding that balance and maybe gently trying to tease out what it is if there's some fears there, and then maybe finding out, you know, is there a particular friend that he particularly likes or feels at ease with, and might that be a place to start? A few more questions.
I mean, again, there's just so much that could be triggered, or so much that could be brought out in this situation. It's, you know, it's going to be so unique for everyone, how they react, how they respond, what comes up. Yeah.
No, it's a tricky thing, and it is different for all of us, and I guess it's hard to know what normal is anymore in terms of socializing, and certainly there can be a sense of relief these past few months, so there's a readjustment that's going to be needed, and I don't think anything needs to be forced. Do you have any questions coming up there, Dan?
I have, let me just see. Sorry, I'm just trying to work it out whether we have some. I have a question. I do have a question around a family, or somebody who's got in touch around a family holiday that's been cancelled. And they have an 8-year-old and a 14-year-old who are feeling quite low, quite frustrated about this. And, you know, I think it kind of really does pull back on what we've been saying around how, you know, the cancellation of the holidays come at a really bad time for the family. It's kind of, you know, they were looking forward to going away after a period of, you know, dealing with some quite difficult family issues. And so there's a lot of disappointment there that's kind of brought up the issues that were kind of being dealt with before. So I think the point that I'd like to say with that is around how, you know, to try and not deal with it necessarily as a whole, and really take time to speak with the two children individually, and really be mindful of the fact that they are different ages and they're going to be reacting in different ways because of their age. And that there's kind of age appropriate ways of responding as parents. Find out what their different thoughts and feelings are about the holiday, what the meanings and feelings they had were attached to it, and think about maybe what their hopes were, what they were anticipating, what they were looking forward to, and these are going to be really different for both of them. And that can help sort of plan something new for the future, to really find out about what their fantasies were about it, what their hopes were. So yeah, that was my thoughts around that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another one in here, again around 6th class. Yeah, someone's daughter who's in 6th class who's finding it difficult, particularly in the evening, when she's imagining that she won't be in her class with her teacher again. She becomes inconsolable. So I do acknowledge it is crap. She went for a social distance walk with one of her classmates today, but she cried again this evening. I can't tell her she'll be back in school, and this is the only thing she wants to hear. It's so difficult. Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, you know, saying that you do acknowledge it's crap, and I know it seems like a very small thing, but naming that feeling is important. You know, it sounds like you're doing all the right things, and this is the time where maybe, you know, a bit of waiting might be needed, which isn't maybe what you want to hear, but there is something about allowing time, and you know, engaging, minding her, you know, coming back to that soothing piece. Are there just little nice things that you can do together, or sensory things that she can do, just to help soothe her and to calm her? And then there is the piece, you know, ultimately about going into getting that bigger perspective, but I wouldn't rush there, around, you know, she will see her classmates again, even though it's not in the same state. And also wondering what's going on, because I know a lot of kids in 6th class in normal situations get very upset at the end of school, and they're very anxious about starting secondary school. So I suppose to tease out that with her as well, when there's a good time. You know, this mightn't be the exact right time, but depending on where she's going to school next year, you know, and how many of her classmates are coming with her, there could be a whole other transition piece there. That's also quite normal. So I guess it's to attend to the immediate, but also wonder about, you know, what else might be going on, and are there other anxieties that can be allayed? I don't know if you have anything else to say to that one, Dan.
No, that sounds good to me. I'm just seeing another question coming in here, and it's around kind of sleep patterns, and is it okay for sleep patterns to be all over the place, sleeping until lunch, staying up late? I have real mixed feelings about that, or there's mixed reaction to that. I think that, do you know what? I think that it's okay sometimes for sleep patterns to be all over the place. Young people haven't got their normal routine. They haven't got the normal sort of energy that they're using up through the day. So it is going to be affected. At the same time, I think it's a pretty much generally accepted that getting some kind of structure is really important. And that if we kind of leave that to go too much, it can lead to maybe kind of more difficult issues. So yeah, I can't really give you a straight answer on that one. Can you help with that? Do you agree with what I'm saying, Maebh?
No, I'd agree. You know, that there's a certain amount of letting go at the moment. You know, there's definitely a wisdom in keeping our rhythm,
Yeah.
similar to before, if we can, or if it suits us. But also there's different rhythms for different people, you know, and a lot of teenagers in particular, it doesn't actually suit them to get up early in the morning, you know, so that's something, you know, maybe they need to find a new rhythm. I guess I'd begin to get worried if somebody was just sleeping all day. You know, or excessively sleeping, that's or couldn't sleep at all at night. But if they're sleeping a sort of, you know, a reasonable amount of hours, and it's sort of, you know, they're finding a new rhythm, I wouldn't get overly worried about it at the moment.
I like the way you put that. I think one of the positives of lockdown for a lot of people I've spoken to has been that they have found their own rhythm, their own internal rhythm. Got back in touch with their own pace a little bit more, and I think young people, children, are the same. I mean, some kids are going to wake up and not want to do much in the mornings, and they don't want to start school straight away at 9 o'clock, and they might be more active in the afternoons. You know, so they're kind of finding this out about themselves. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I have another question in there. Yeah, that's a tricky question. Would you think that it would be better not to get too excited with children about new school in September? So this must be someone starting secondary school, i.e. new bag, uniform, yeah, friends, books, etc. in case the boy has just up school again. So that's someone who has a child in 6th class at the moment, wondering would it be better not to get too excited about September?
It's a great question, because in a way it's you know, we've been talking about disappointment. That's about anticipating disappointment, isn't it? It's like, well, what do we do? Do we sort of downplay things and kind of temper excitement and build up, or do we go with it and assume that things are going to happen and enjoy all of that? It's a tough one. I'd be inclined to kind of enjoy the build up and, you know, look forward to something, but also be honest and explain, well, look, we don't know for sure it's going to happen, but let's enjoy the build up to it anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess there is that thing, and it's not always that easy for us all to do, but how is it to stay in the present with that as well? You know, that on other days that it's sort of that we don't know. And like you said, Dan, being honest, we don't really know, but we can still begin to prepare for it, like many things in life, you know. So I think that it's finding that balance. So, I don't know, do I have any other questions on my side, Dan? I don't know if you've any kind of.
I can't see any more on my side.
Okay, one thing I'm just going to do, because I meant to do it earlier, is just put up the slide of Jigsaw Supports. There we go. Just so that everyone can see that and take a note of it. It's all online anyway. But yeah, so Jigsaw Online has lots of different resources and articles and little videos and different things. There's also an Ask Jigsaw feature where you can send in questions, and there's group chats run daily. And then there's also our free phone number, or you can text and get a call back, and you can also email. And the free phone and the email are for parents and for young people. So, you know, that's if you want sort of help or advice or anything else, or you want to be directed somewhere. There's lots of information and resources you can get through the website and through that number. So that's it. Just have a look again and see if anything else has come up. Yeah, no, I think that's it for now. So yeah, any final words, Dan, as we head off?
I just really want to thank everyone that's joined us this evening. It is a really difficult area to have a solid answer for, and I just really wish you all the best in trying to help and manage children deal with disappointments, and to really, as well, like we said at the beginning, give yourselves some time to appreciate your disappointments as well, and really look at what you need in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go gently, both with yourself and with your young people. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye. Bye-bye.